So if I happen to know something about somebody in, like personally, or I've done some social engineering to understand via LinkedIn where someone went to school, what their favorite sports team is, what college they went to or university, what their employer happens to be, I can use some algorithms. I can use some best guesses here to kind of like formulate a password, right? And once I've got that password, now I'm using probability to think about basically replicating that particular password if I gain access across multiple sites. So to me, that really talks to the first three bullet points. They're about reusing passwords, about common passwords, and about said weak passwords. The last thing that I'd like you to all consider, okay, is this. We've just emerged from a very interesting 2.5 years, right, as a global population. But now think back to the situation where in the first 6 months, where all of us were potentially working from home, perhaps working with family members or friends, and perhaps having to share a password for a common thing such as accessing, kind of like a Wi-Fi password, a streaming service password. How did you accomplish that? Now, take that particular question that was applicable in your personal environment and now put that in the corporate workplace. I can tell you from experience, way back when I used to work in tech support on actually, I can't remember if it was Verizon or AT&T's, one of their networks. And so basically, we had a spreadsheet on a file server. Is that your business? Because if you've got a spreadsheet on a file server, as a support engineer, I would access said spreadsheet, no security behind it, take that password and think about using it to access some devices. So it makes no difference to me if I'm thinking about a computer or whether I'm thinking about a networking piece of equipment. There's a password associated to that. If I'm sharing it, I want some controls around that. So these are all kind of like the reasons as to the why are we here and the challenges that many consumers and businesses actually face.
Yeah, no, I
Sure,
mean, you hit the nail on the head, absolutely, in regards to, it's not just your home life, but it's also the work, life, I guess you could say. When we reuse passwords, it's like, okay, I gotta think of something that's quick and easy because you're typically trying to log in really fast just to get your work done or something. But think about all of the information we share online. And now think back to what is in your passwords. If someone is really out to get you, they'll just go online, find your birthday, find your kid's name, their teacher, their age, so on and so forth, and they basically have your password, right? And then going back to sharing it with others as well. So I think you absolutely knocked the, nail the nail on the head, whatever the saying is. And I think you clearly, went over this perfectly. So now, passwords are the key to every tech entry point, which makes them a target. Let's talk about this, Raghav. This is always a little scary to me because I feel as though this is the bridge, the easy bridge between someone who's very innocent and is only trying to do what they're meant to do, which is their work, versus a cyber criminal.
Yeah, to me, that's very, very interesting because basically at the end of the day, right, I mean, the devil is in the detail, right? And so when you sit and think about kind of the exposure to these websites, right, that you're using passwords for, now what you're doing basically is taking a scenario where you've got a breach that occurs that involves that weak password, right? And when you look at the percentage of those breaches that are occurring as a result of that human element. I have a quicker tangential data point here. In the chat over here, I'm going to throw in a website. That website is a website that all of you can use to go and check to see if any of your emails have actually ever been compromised. So to me, it gets very compelling, whether it's I'm using my Gmail address or my whatever email address, or whether I'm using my corporate email address. I'm going to ask all of you, not right now, but perhaps make a note of that website and actually put in an email address and see what you get back from it. Now, when you think about that, okay, you're now going to understand that you represent, or well, rhetorically, we represent the percentages that are being highlighted on this slide. So when I think about that, okay, I'm going to consider moving away from a reused or a weak password, and I'm absolutely going to go as long as I can on a certain website. I'll give you an example. Just the other day, I created a new site for a new recent credit card for air miles, a very, very common thing that any one of us might do. And what I ended up doing was basically using my old, like a reused password that I was very familiar with to just get that initial process going, because I couldn't be bothered, basically, right? And as soon as I'd done it and my account was activated, I went back into LastPass, met the policy restraints around 64 characters, used LastPass to create a password that was 64 using all sorts of symbols and characters and numbers, etc. And now, miraculously, I have this password, 64 characters in length, that I have no idea what the password is about. But when I want to access it from my iPhone or from my MacBook or my Mac or whatever, boom, I just hit launch and LastPass automatically logs me in. And I can feel rest assured that the algorithms, the security that's behind LastPass with the encryption and the decryption that's going on all of there, like, to me as a consumer and as a business user, I can feel secure in knowing that my information in my vault, because of the zero knowledge model that LastPass introduces, it's never going to be exposed. And that as a result of that, my information won't end up turning up in one of these breach reports.
Yeah. Again, going back to the slide, 85% of breaches involve a human element. And LastPass helps, well, let's back up. I'll say they help with the breaches, not at all, but rather they help remove that human element. Okay, so we just had a question in the chat saying, like, how do you make a password that's appropriate, that would actually be easy to remember? Well, how about let's reduce remembering and let's let something like LastPass make the password for you. Because at the end of the day, all you need to do is remember one super safe password to access all of your other passwords that are top tier secure. We were just talking about how your online accounts can have a huge password, 64 characters. We're not expected to remember that. So have LastPass create that for you, store it for you, and it can fill it in when you jump onto the web page. So again, that kind of helps remove the human element. Of course, humans aren't going anywhere, at least we hope, right? So let's let technology make this easier for us. So going back to the sign, right? I was inspired by this guy. If you don't know this guy, I think he kind of blew up over 2020, and he's holding up all these signs in, like, I think New York or something. But he has a point, right? How am I supposed to remember all of these characters as a password? Well, you're not. Realistically, we don't really want you to remember, because we don't want any other cyber criminal to crack it, right? So, I mean, I think he speaks for all of us. We've all had those issues, right? So here's a controversial opinion. Passwords are a problem. They're also part of the solution. What's your take on this, Raghav?
So yeah, they're absolutely part of the problem, but in terms of part of the solution, again, I see one particular individual posting some questions there about about passwords in general. How are they part of the solution? Quite simply this: you're collapsing upwards of 100 passwords that a typical average human being has, okay, into one. And now this particular password is like literally a master password or master passphrase. Now, when you couple this with something like MFA, and when you think about an experience that's a more recent initiative through what we refer to as the passwordless experience, which is being generally adopted across the industry, basically, you're now removing layers of difficulty with respect to users accessing their vault, where all the content is placed, but it's all behind an initial setup of one password, which now what we're doing is we're giving users the option to actually say, don't even enter in your password. Rather, if any of you on the call today have an iPhone like what I do, or an Android for that matter, what I tend to do is I use MFA when I'm accessing my banking application or my credit card application. So that same user experience on my phone is going to be the same user experience in terms of accessing my vault using that passwordless experience. So to reiterate here, Sherry, it really is part of the solution. but it's one integral part of the solution.
I agree. Security and user experience, the constant battle, right? You need to secure your company's account and data, and you also need to make it simple for employees to access their work. I definitely feel that this is a huge pain point when it comes to really not just at work, but it's really anyone using technology, going back to the iPhones. If it's not easy, simple, quick, I'm talking like what, 6 seconds quick nowadays. Then who wants to use it? Who wants to be bothered? Because what's easy is what you have been doing for years, right? But that change is coming and it's coming fast, right, Raghav?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, again, just touching upon the launch of passwordless, I think what we're going to see is more and more vendors, and by vendors or providers, like say someone like Facebook or an app or like Twitter or LinkedIn or something like that. They're all part of this FIDO2 alliance. They're all heading down this direction of making a passwordless experience available to many, many individuals. But to me, some of the aspects around security and constraints and policies and reporting and things like that absolutely become paramount to the business. So when I'm looking at that slide there and I'm thinking about needing to secure your company, those of you that have attended on the call today, think about this. You have an employee, we'll go through a what if scenario. I'm based in Boston. Sherry, refresh my memory. Where are you, please?
Virginia.
Okay. So I'm an employee of Sherry's. Sherry basically through LastPass can set up a policy to restrict my access based upon the business hours. Also, in terms of hours, can also restrict my access with respect to a geofence, a location. So from this perspective, okay, you have the ability with the policies that we have in place to be able to really actually get a true understanding of your business from a point of view of who is accessing what and when. And in addition to that, supplementing that with the reporting information, if I'm thinking about some compliance or some audit or some cyber insurance related needs, there are going to be requirements that are going to, stipulate that, well, how much visibility have you got across the business? Speaking of cyber insurance, multi-factor authentication. Already kind of touched upon that with using the banking application or passwordless. MFA, right, as a user experience could be a simple push notification of a 6-digit text code, right? Or it could actually be facial recognition tied to an application that's held in my LastPass vault, which is equally protected by a specific device for an employee. I'll give you a what if scenario again. You have an employee that's accessing work from a coffee place. It could be Starbucks, Cafe Nero, Pete's Coffee, whatever. Not uncommon, right? Could be any one of you commuting. So when you access, what do? Do you go on their Wi-Fi? Please say no. And if you do, please tell me that when you connect to corporate that you're going in via VPN and not having some random person basically sniffing your Wi-Fi signal. Because you know as well as I do that there are those individuals that are out there. So when I think about securing the company assets and data, to me, data are your assets, your business. And so the risk that to you is if that gets compromised, well, we've seen the net results over the last couple of years. In terms of making it simple, go back to one of the opening slides that Sherry and I were discussing and with our iPhones, and Sherry's mother actually point and take. We're talking about intuitive interface, making it easy for anybody to use. When you couple those two things together, then I think you can ultimately find that said right balance.
Guys, he's good. This is why we have him here today. I mean, you have said absolutely everything that we've been preaching from day one, right? In regards to going to the coffee shop, you want to make sure that they at least have a password to go onto their Wi-Fi account. But don't let that be the only thing. Make sure you have a VPN, because let's say, you may have your passwords in your Chrome or in your Google browser or something, or your internet browser. Well, if you just happen to jump on some free Wi-Fi that may not be from Starbucks or whomever else, but rather from a cyber criminal, well, now they can access those passwords within the browser. So going back to the passwords, making it easy, making it secure, making sure you have MFA set up as well is very crucial.
Excellent point there, Sherry.
So solve for security and user experience in one tool. Make passwords part of the solution. That's what we were just talking about. See, we have, I love this graph because you have the seamless and intuitive experience, right? So you have your setup, your sign in and go. That's it. You just go to your place or go to your account and you're in. Make it simple. Automatically save and fill. Then you have the bridge over to the password manager. That's what can bring the seamless, intuitive experience over to the secure and encrypted really requirements nowadays. And I know we had a comment over in the chat talking about how encrypted this is, and we'll get to that in a second. But the digital vault, I love that about LastPass. Also, the military grade encryption, that shocked me because now, as an average user, when you kind of see something saying military grade or military, experience, you feel a sense of security within itself. You're like, okay, if the top big dogs are doing it, then I get to do it. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but it feels good knowing that the security is there. And then of course, we've talked about the rules and the policies.
Let me just touch actually, if I may, on the military grade encryption.
Awesome.
So when you think about LastPass, okay, here's what I'd like you to consider. So you have a combination of your username, your email address, for example, and this master password or passphrase, right? And remember, again, certainly my recommendation is that you always think about enabling MFA to gain access into your vault. So in essence, you've got three components, right? You've got your email address. That's not in any way secure per se, but you certainly have your master password or passphrase, right? That in of itself should be long and somewhat complex, but you'll be rest assured to know that the only individual that knows it is you. Unless, of course, you actually choose to share it with someone. You have like an emergency access mechanism in place, which you can do in cases of emergency, through LastPass. But no one at LastPass, no one else ever knows what the access mechanism is, that master password or master passphrase. Now that's part one of the process. Part two is this blob of information that sits in LastPass. Now, in order to retrieve and access this information, this blob, you have to literally key in and access this blob using the metrics that you have, or not the metrics, but the information rather that you have. So hand in hand, okay, they gain you access into the content of your vault, whether you happen to be on a phone or a laptop or a tablet, and irrespective of where you happen to be in the world. Now, what's interesting about that actually is you can, as a business owner, set restrictions on who and when accesses and how they access. So I just want to reiterate, okay, the data that's held in the vault is a blob. It's encrypted. AES 256, right? That's our standard mechanism in terms of the encryption. But the only way it can ever be decrypted and accessed by you as a LastPass user is through a combination of your master password. So when I want to access the content in my vault, I'm using that, and then I'm prompting myself to clear an MFA challenge. And then, and only then, will the information held in my vault, which all has randomly generated passwords in it now, will be downloaded for me to be able to access.
Yeah. And I'm glad you started that with an emphasis on how LastPass cannot see your passwords, and neither can your IT department see your passwords. We provide LastPass to our customers, and a common question we get is, well, can you see our passwords? First off, I don't want to see your passwords. I'm not bored enough to want to go through your passwords. And second, no, we cannot see your passwords. It's completely yours, right? So, going back to the security, it is your passwords, and that's your account, period. So we talked a lot about LastPass, so we're going to introduce LastPass and kind of give you a little bit of behind the scenes on what LastPass looks like. So are you ready?
I am. Let's go for it. All right. So what you're looking at right now represents two different instances of LastPass. In the middle of the screen, there is a representation of LastPass on an iPhone, but clearly we support Android devices as well. Now, just to set the stage here, LastPass is a device, OS, and browser agnostic solution. Okay, so whether you're using Edge, Chrome, Firefox, doesn't really matter. LastPass will work in those environments. We also have Mac related apps. My family, we're an Apple family. And so we have the Apple Mac laptop. Sorry, we have the LastPass app installed on our Macs. So in this environment, okay, what we're basically saying is we can work in the different customer engagements or customer environments. In addition to that, I want to just draw your attention to the last sentence there. LastPass's zero knowledge model. There's a lot of conversation in the industry about zero trust. Zero trust is not zero knowledge. Zero knowledge is quite literally about using that combination of that username and that master password coupled or used in order to access the content of your vault. That's a zero knowledge model. So I just want to make sure that I clear that up. But Sherry, yeah, I mean, let's dig in some more.
Yeah. So this slide has really, I don't know, it stuck with me. This morning I said, I gotta wake up, I gotta do something with this slide. It has been with me since the first day we saw it. And it's the four categories of really password management for businesses and really just humans in general, talking about secure, the convenience, the compliance. That's a huge one, especially with cyber insurance and cyber security for businesses. And then, of course, scalability. All of these, I think we touched on a little bit more. I think we can kind of go into even more about the convenience aspect. You know, you can go onto your email account or whether it's your favorite website or something. Just having that option for, first off, if you create an account, having LastPass pop up saying, do you want us to save this? Yes, rather than your Chrome or any other internet browser asking you, it's LastPass asking you. And that's a lifesaver, right? And then, of course, if you are actually going back into that account to sign in, it just automatically fills. There is an option to do that. So that's convenient. And I don't know how much time it has saved me. Maybe I should do some research on that, like do a contest or a little, what is it? Trial and error. I don't know what it is. See how long will actually save me time when I log into different platforms, right? The same thing with MFA, having the code and all that. But then the compliance. Raghav, do you want to talk about the compliance or scalability?
Absolutely. So to me, I'm engaged in a lot of activities where, working with organizations like Travelers and Cowbell and such likes who offer cyber insurance. And so what's interesting about this, okay, each organization has different requirements, but MFA is a standard requirement across all organizations. So what I'm seeing and what I would imagine that many of you on the call today are considering is how much MFA are you going to actually deploy across your environment, right? So for me, if I think about it, okay, the analogy that I always think about is a house. You have a house with a front door and maybe you just have a lock, a deadbolt on it. But now with modern technology, you can have like cameras, you can have burglar alarms, you can have all sorts of different alarms placed in to protect the content and yourselves within your home. To me, that's kind of like what MFA is. But in this environment, we're using MFA to protect your business, to meet the minimum requirements in order to gain said cyber insurance policy. Much like in the same way that if you do have a home with a burglar alarm and cameras and all the rest of it, your home insurance policy is discounted. Well, not surprisingly, that's also the same with cyber insurance related policies. They set the standard with respect to, in order for you to meet our criteria, you have to have X, Y, and Z. So from that perspective, okay, not just meeting those standards, but I go back to it, reporting on those standards, understanding who accessed what, when, and why, and making sure that you've got the various security measures in place to lock down your environment. Those will all help to address different compliant related needs.
I think it's perfect.
Sorry.
Yeah. And then that brings up to our next point, why Team CTS and LastPass? Well, if you've been around for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we've talked a lot about cybersecurity, and cybersecurity insurance. And our mission during this month and really moving forward is to help educate 1 million people, plus you. And you're here today so you can help us educate 1 million people about being cyber safe and cybersecurity, and in regards to also cyber insurance for businesses. So guys, you're part of this mission, and we're going to go on ahead and dive in. By the way, if you like anything that you see from LastPass and what they have to offer, and a little inside scoop on what they do, feel free to reach out to me, Sherry, at teamcts.com, and we can go ahead and set up what your business would look like with LastPass and all the capabilities there. So let's go on ahead and dive in.
Okay, so the next series of slides, folks, are going to consist of what an end user experience might look like for an employee, perhaps of your company, or perhaps even one of yourselves here. So for us, in terms of best practices, okay, we've already established the potential poor behavior that individuals, myself included, right, had in the past. And so now with LastPass, once a user has actually received their invitation and has activated their vault, okay, it's basically a blank vault, no content in it. Our best practice recommendation, number one, so to speak, is run an import wizard. Why? Well, we've already established there are individuals that are out there that are using Chrome Password Manager. Irrespective of the fact that it's not a secure mechanism and it has no policies around it, there's still individuals using it. Same can be said about a spreadsheet. I actually was a spreadsheet user way back when, and I figured that way, this is really secure. My LastPass analysis after the import wizard was performed basically threw that theory right out of the water, which actually, Sherry, if you wouldn't mind moving to the next slide. Best practice or recommendation number, best practice or recommendation number 3, we'll get to momentarily. But after the import has been done, this is what your vault will look like. You'll notice, okay, within all of those different objects there, some of them have little red dots next to them. Why is the question? Well, LastPass is highlighting, okay, the analysis that has been done upon the content of my vault after the import has actually been executed. So now we'll move to that second best practice. Please, Sherry. Thank you. So the security dashboard, this is the analysis. This is the ROI. So for me, okay, at the end of the day, whether I'm using LastPass personally or whether I'm using it professionally, I want to be rest assured in knowing that my digital profile, so to speak, is secure. First off, okay, if I draw your attention to the middle of the screen, you'll notice where it states dark web monitoring. So here's what I'd like you to consider. For those of us that have been involved prior to LastPass, where we might have received breach notification from, say, Equifax or TransUnion or someone like that, when they physically mail you a letter, right, saying that your credentials were exposed in Words with Friends or something like that, guilty as charged. That happened to me. Now, what's interesting about that, okay, is now using LastPass, first off, my passwords around all applications and sites are very, very secure. Secondly, in the event that an email address of mine is compromised, I'm going to receive notification from LastPass. Now, first off, I feel comfortable in using very long passwords. So the risk and the odds of that occurring are very, very minimal. But I also feel good about receiving an email notification. Why? Because I'm not relying on the postal service. It's instantaneous, right? Now, additionally to that, okay, you'll notice on the right-hand side of the screen where it says, I have no alerts. That's what one would want. But in the event of an issue occurring, you will receive notification and you will receive the suggestion to take corrective action. Now, that being said, what I want to really draw your attention to, though, not only just as a user, but from a business perspective, is what I've highlighted in red. That red rectangle there represents 14 passwords that are a risk to the business. There are business assets there that have passwords in them that are potentially duplicated, that are potentially missing, or that are potentially weak. So when you think about what those passwords represent, right, we've established they represent risk, and you think about perhaps that you have a cyber insurance renewal coming up or a cyber insurance issue that you've already gone through, that to me gives me cause for concern. We want 0, literally 0, leading towards a percentage score of high upper 90 percentile, right? So that's the motivation behind it. Nicely done, Ben. All right. Next slide, please there, Sherry.
Yeah.
So now with that stage just being set and without Ben saying 100%, here's what I'd like you to consider. Those 5 reports that are highlighted in that rectangle right there, they are all reporting on passwords. That's it, just passwords. But now look in detail on what they're reporting. Weak passwords, duplicate passwords, duplicate passwords that have been applied to more than 3 sites. Just stop and think about that again. If the average human, the average employee has over 100 passwords, this is a report that's highlighting that this individual has more than 3 sites or more that has the same password. Now put that in your business. So to me, your organization can gain this information from Sherry's organization. Should you choose to have an admin from your company, you can gain this visibility too. But you can actually get this information from Sherry's organization as and when you engage with them for LastPass. So I would put it to you that basically, I'm a big believer personally about my return on investment. And so from this perspective, not only do I get the peace of mind that my employees are now using a very secure solution in LastPass, but more importantly, the proof is in the eating of the pudding, right? So in this example, I can see a report monthly, bi-weekly, quarterly, based upon the information that's held in here. The impacted users column in the middle, you want that to be 0 for obvious reasons, or certainly low single digits. But these 4 slides really encompass part of what the user experience looks like, but then in addition, gives you as the business owner the ROI aspect of LastPass in terms of password security across your organization. Thank you, Sherry.
Yeah. Now let's go into Q&A. We have it labeled as frequently asked questions, but we're really going to open this up for the Q&A portion of this webinar. So now that you understand what LastPass looks like from the security dashboard, which is personally my favorite because it definitely keeps me in check, all the way to how to really bring in all your passwords and seeing all your passwords with the links and everything all together in one. You can really see where that interface, that intuitive interface is very appealing. So I'm going to go back through some of the chat questions and kind of see what are some questions that we can go ahead and answer. Let's see here. I know you guys have been messaging a lot. So if you learned anything, just let us know what you learned about. And if you have any questions, go ahead and leave us a question in the chat. So how long does it take us to make a new password so that it says it can be strong? That's a good question. Or, how to make a new password that would be strong, right? I know we recommended the 3 things rule, where you look around you for 3 different things, and that can be part of your password. Of course, you can change the characters and the numbers and everything. So that's one option, making a strong password. Also, Ben in the chat mentioned how you can use passphrases for making a password. Can you share your company profiles? Share your company profiles. I'm not sure on that one. I know you can share a password to another user, safe. So it's not like, hey, here's my email that you have to use to log in, and then here's the password I'm gonna let you use for like 24 hours, and you have to change it 24 hours. But rather, it's just all encrypted. So the person receiving your password will not see the password. Let's see here. Company uses VPNs and also uses Google authentication for passwords. We have separate iPhones given for uses these codes for security when the employees are in the office. Really interesting. Do we get a recovery phrase when we register on the app for better security reasons? So are you referencing in regards to, like, if you forgot your master password, maybe? Let's see here. How do you make it to where you can make it? How do you make it where you can make it where it is impossible to crack, but something you can remember? I think that's like been the age-old question since day one with technology. How can you do it to where you can remember, but nobody else can? I mean, Raga, what do you think on that one?
Yeah, good question. So just as an example, I'll address this question and then the recovery question in a moment. One, we'll just say, like, my work password and my home password are probably 30 to 40 characters in length. each of them. Can't remember exactly because I've never really counted it. Actually, I just know what they are in terms of phrases. So to me, I would encourage all of you to really sit and think about something like, what was your most memorable meal? Where was it? Who was it with? What's the country that you most want to visit? What's your favorite bottle of wine or your favorite alcoholic aperitif or your favorite flower? And use all of those as a combination, mixing up capitals, numbers, symbols, exclamation point for the letter I. I mean, quite literally things like that, and then imprint that in your memory. And remember as well that you have the option with a LastPass Vault to provide emergency access to a user in the event that they ever need to gain access into your vault on your behalf.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, okay, it's been built in a way that, not only is it secure, but should you actually need to share information, I have a families account across my family. LastPass offers every single business user a families account. So for each one business user license, you gain access to 5 additional licenses through families as a benefit. So that's a mechanism that you can look to utilize to share said passwords or that one master passphrase word should you actually need to. So that hopefully, Sherry, addresses that question. Now, just going back to the recovery. Yes, we do absolutely have recovery mechanisms in place. We can gain or we can share information with Sherry and Ben's organization and obviously work through. I would encourage you to work through CTS. But yes, we absolutely have recovery mechanisms in place.
Yeah. And my mom recently, I don't say like maybe within the past year, reached out. She was like, I'm making you my emergency contact. And I was like, this is weird because she just finished, kind of writing up her will. And I know it's kind of very dark, but like she's transitioning into that life, the stage of her life rather. And I was like, is this going to be the new thing where on your will, you're going to have to put your LastPass like emergency contact?
Well, Sherry, in all honesty, I think that it's a very practical use of LastPass because of the fact that you are, rest assured in the security behind it. But then equally, if you're providing access to it, like how many of you here on the call today have said either whether it's business or personal related information that is, will, trust, estate related information? Is it with a business lawyer or with a trust lawyer? And to me, the use case is applicable to both camps. And so from this perspective, right, whether you are using LastPass to retain credit card information, passport information, and credit card information that could be a corporate credit card. Let's be very clear about that versus a personal credit card. These are all very good use cases for LastPass, irrespective of whether you're using it as a business or as a family or as a consumer. I saw some questions pop up about like the size of companies. So I live in Massachusetts, right? I lived in Boston. For those of you that have visited, there's a very famous college here that begins with the letter H. That is one of our customers. Obviously speaks to the education vertical, but we are a global brand with over 1 billion passwords protected. And I want to say that we've got over 100,000 businesses of varying sizes, running from SMB through to large enterprise. And that runs the spectrum. So to me, I've used the phrase, the proof is in the eating of the pudding before, and I'm going to use it again. When I think about buying a product, okay, in general, irrespective of what product I'm buying, I'm going to do my due diligence. And I'm going to tend to read reviews and think about what organization am I working in and who am I representing. And so from that perspective, I generally feel pretty rest assured in knowing that LastPass is best of breed. Why? A couple of things to consider. We are not just a password management solution. We are also an identity solution that has aspects of single sign-on, should that actually be relative to your organization or relevant to your organization. And as we've talked about several times before, MFA. Those aspects, those 3 components make LastPass a best of breed solution for various businesses of different sizes, as we've established.
Yeah. Um, you were bringing up how with you being with LastPass, you can have the family accounts and we have the same capabilities as well. So for our CTS customers who have LastPass, they also can use it at home for themselves. So it's not just in the office usage, it's actually home and office. So we want to teach our customers how to keep that safe and separate. And it's really nice because we also like to say, what you do at home, you're going to do at the office. So if you're going to make a different password at home, you should be making a different password at the office. So it's really nice to have that benefit. Awesome, guys. Yeah, I think those are about all of the questions. So if you guys are interested in learning more about LastPass for yourself in your business, like I said, reach out to myself, Sherry at teamcts.com, and I'll be able to get you set up with a meeting and we can kind of learn more about what your business does and if it would be a good fit. Let's see here. We had some controversy over iPhone versus Android. Which one is more secure? And, shout out to Ben Jones. He's in the chat. He is our director of cybersecurity up here at CTS, and he's been answering a lot of these questions. So I definitely trust him with a lot of things. So everything he's saying is spot on. So if you guys have any other questions, feel free to let us know, or you can just, leave us. He's leaving a little GIF in the chat. Leave us a question again in the comments. We can kind of answer the last few questions that's on our FAQ. Why can't I just save my passwords in the browser / on my computer? We talked about this, right? So that's a perfect avenue for a cyber criminal to come in and snatch them up, really. And it's not just snatching it. They can come in as you and you don't know it, and they can log into those accounts and then change the passwords while being logged into that account. So, there's a lot of tricky ways that hackers can get in and steal your information on internet browsers. Browser saved passwords are unencrypted. Pretty much. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. So another question is, can I download LastPass or do I need to get my IT team department involved? Definitely get your IT department involved. That's what I always say, especially if you're in a business. If you're just going to try it for yourself, try it at home, just to kind of test it out. Take it seriously. Don't just set it up and get it and forget it. Really take it seriously. And then if you're ready to implement it into your business, definitely get someone on the IT side to help you with that, because that could be just making sure everybody's on the same page and you want more than just one person who is in IT to help out with that. So I think that's
Sherry,
about
if I may,
everything. Yeah.
yeah, if I may, one closing comment for everybody on the call today. As Sherry stressed, any LastPass interest, please direct that through to Sherry and to Benjamin. Please do not come to LastPass directly and start a trial, because that will complicate matters. We encourage you strongly to go through CTS, please.
Yeah. So guys, that concludes our webinar. If you have any other questions, like I said, reach out. But thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll use some of these recording snippets for other social media things. If you missed it or a colleague has missed it, make sure they can check out our social media for more information. But thank you, Raga, for hanging out with us and talking about LastPass and introducing all the capabilities.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.